Okay, we got that started. Cool. Sharing. All right. So next up, we're going to be sharing our team goals. This team was formed a couple of months ago in the end of 2020 with just a handful of people who contributed to putting together some goals for the team that we'd like to accomplish here in our neighborhood. I will share those. Okay, can you guys see the team goals, or is it still the agenda?
Still the agenda.
Okay. Let me share. All right,
Okay.
team goals should be coming through.
Got 'em.
Okay, cool. So we have 4 main goals. Yeah, Jerry?
Can you send these out to all of us?
Yes, absolutely. I will share these and any of the other documents that I present in the meeting tonight. I'll send those in the meeting notes for everybody. All right, so the goals that we came up with, we do want to share that these goals will likely evolve as the team starts kind of moving and picks up the different areas that we want to focus on as different people become involved. So this is just an initial high level goal. So these may change over time. We do want to point that out. But our biggest goal on this team is community engagement. Personal safety is definitely the most important aspect of emergency preparedness. If you're not keeping yourself safe, you're not able to help anybody else in any situation. So personal preparedness, personal education is our big goal here in community engagement. And we want to bring together any type of training opportunities that we can share with our neighbors, sharing resiliency strategies with them, and then also figuring out what kind of challenges our neighbors might be facing. Could it be a disability that they need to find a special accommodation for? Could it be different language barriers that we need to figure out how to communicate better with our neighborhoods, with our neighbors? So those are some of our high level goals with community engagement. Our second goal is identifying the hazards, threats, and risks for the River Road neighborhood. This activity has already been done in a couple other neighborhoods in Eugene. So we do have a good framework to start from. There's a lot of other neighborhood organizations that have already started different plans, writing up, identifying their different hazards, but those are going to be different depending on what area of Eugene you live in. Things in the South Hills might not be the same for us down here in the Flatlands. So we're going to be putting together a work group that's going to be identifying some of the challenges that our neighborhood might be facing. Eventually, and this goal here, number 3, is kind of a more of a long-term goal. We'd like to develop sort of an organizational command structure to where if there is an emergency, we did have to evacuate our neighborhood, or we did have to check on our neighbors, things like that, we might have a command structure in place and some resources of who we could contact, even if it's small on a smaller scale on your street. But we'd eventually like to put something like that together. And then our last goal is making sure that we account for implementing that plan and updates to that plan. So can we do this in a phased approach? What needs to happen every year to revisit that plan, to make it better for the neighborhood? Have we learned more things? Has our neighborhood layout changed? We just want to make sure that we're accounting for those updates. Anybody have questions or feedback on these goals? Yeah, John.
Yeah, I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. That's good. I just want to underline the 1C right there, the resiliency strategies. And we can certainly probably have more chances in the future, you know, to get into more detail, because this is kind of what I'm interested in. But if we quit participating in making the problems that are causing a need to be concerned about evacuation, then we may reduce the likelihood that we got to evacuate. And that can be at a home level, at a community level, and certainly at a national level. I mean, all these problems we're worried about didn't happen by themselves. I happen to think that humans are consuming so much that climate change is just an inevitable result, along with a lot of other problems. So that's enough for now. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that point. And that theme of resiliency definitely comes up in a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about tonight. So that will definitely be an area of focus that our neighbors are interested in. All right, any other questions, comments? Okay, so I will stop sharing that one. And we'll move on to, up next, we have our new member survey results. So I think most of the people on this call did complete the new member survey. We put that together to figure out where the interest lies in our neighborhood about what people want to learn about, what emergency preparedness skills are you interested in acquiring. So we are going to see a general overview of those results. Let me share those. Okay. Did everybody see it says new member survey results? Cool.
Yes.
All right, so we got about 6 slides to look at here. So this is just a general count of I think we had about 20 people respond to, 19 to 20 people respond to the survey so far. We have about 3 ham radio operators in our general vicinity. And then this was the slide that most everybody, and I will send out this slide deck to everybody as well. But this is the slide that we really wanted to gauge from our neighbors is what is everybody interested in learning about? That's the point of our team here. What information can we share with our neighbors? The overwhelming majority here was the CERT Community Emergency Response Team. There's a lot of interest in acquiring that training in our neighborhood. And we will talk a little bit more about the different CERT updates that are going on a little later in the call. Map Your Neighborhood and resource sharing was also another really high interest level. So I think everybody in our community is understanding the importance of being prepared with your street and that we need to be able to support our neighbors where we can. General personal and family preparedness was another very high interest level. Food and water preparation and storage, that one, all of these had well over 10 responses, so well over half of the people. Yeah, Jan?
Just a quick, these vertical lines, does that represent one person or 2 people or 3 people, or they don't even mean anything?
Oh yeah, there's a count at the bottom down here. Maybe it's cut off in the screen share. So the left is 0 and the right is 16. So the start line right here goes to 14. Food and water preparation is about 11 people.
So that means it looks like each vertical line is like 2 people.
Yes, yep, each line is 2 people.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So food and water preparation and storage, that's definitely a big interest level. Medical care and first aid, along with evacuation plans. Neighborhood-wide fire drill planning and execution. We have ham radio operation and communications. We had 8 people respond to that. So Jerry and Matt, there's definitely some good interest in that field day that you all were mentioning for the communications exercise. We have 7 people that responded to search and rescue, logistics and point of command, and also community outreach and engagement. And then 6 people for government agency relationships and communications, so getting involved with the different organizations that are available, either locally or statewide or nationally. General resilient lifestyles, there was 5 people that answered that. And then news, public radio, and social media communications, so interacting with the media in the event of an emergency, getting those communications out to the public, things like that. And then this slide asks the question in a little bit different format. So what certification or training are you interested in acquiring? And some of these might be a little more official certifications, but one of the big responses was how to garden, water collection, and food storage and preservation. So we had 12 people respond on that one. First aid and CPR was separated, but we had 12 people there, 8 people for CPR. So definitely a lot of interest in first aid and CPR. And we will talk more about that type of training a little later on. How to read maps, use a compass, how to travel safely during an emergency. We had 8 people there. Ham radio, definitely a lot of interest in ham radio, but as we know, there are a lot of good resources out there for that training. Obtaining the official CERT certification, a lot of interest in that. Learning more about environmental justice issues in Eugene, firearm basics and safety, conflict de-escalation and resolution, volunteer firefighting certification, know your rights, and how to lobby your elective representative. All right, so we also polled our neighbors to ask what kind of skills, roles, positions, education do you have that you'd be willing to share with this team? And we have a lot of good resources of people in our neighborhood. A lot of good respondents came back with data entry skills. We have 5 people that are CERT certified. We have 4 people who are well-versed in website building and maintenance, fundraising and grant writing, community engagement and outreach. We also have a couple of first aid and CPR instructors, which is awesome. A couple of people in a government role have a government background. A couple of people in logistics and incident command training. We have 1 CERT trainer in the area, and then someone with other emergency response training. So definitely a lot of good resources in our neighborhood here. All right, and then I think this is the last question. Are there any items that you feel comfortable sharing with our neighbors in the event of an emergency? We have a lot of people responded that they have outdoor space on their property that they'd be willing to share with neighbors if their homes were destroyed. About 4 people have ham radio systems or some other type of radio communication. A handful of people have a large capacity van or truck that can be used during an evacuation to transport neighbors. 4 people have a generator that they'd be willing to share. A couple of people have space on their property to store FEMA tents and shelters. And then a couple of people have landlines, water filtration systems, and a water well on their property. So those are just general overviews of where the interest level lies, what type of resources we have. And with that, I'm going to go back to I'm interested in learning about. And the next section of our, oh yeah, Charles.
I just wanted to say there may be people on this call that have not yet filled out the survey. So how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, so the link is it was in the meeting invite. I can also include that in the meeting notes. And that is the best way if you want to share this team with anybody, to send that link to somebody or to send that link to them and have them fill them out. That gets you added to the email distribution list and then gives us the rest of the stats as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions on the feedback that we've gotten so far? Cool. Okay, so I went back to the I am interested in learning about, and ideally what will happen here is we'd like to create some work groups of people who are interested in a specific topic and would like to participate in maybe researching what type of training is available out there, organizing some virtual training sessions, bringing that information back to the larger group. Not everybody that's on this call can participate in all 12, 15 items that are on here. You're not all going to be interested in all 15 items that are on here. But we do want you to get involved where you're interested in. So with that said, if anybody wants to start and say that they are interested in starting a work group, you don't necessarily have to be the leader of anything, but if you just want to collaborate with a couple other people, I'll throw that out to the group. Yeah, Charles, you started.
Well, I know that over time my interests will increase, but right now I'm most interested in mapping my neighborhood and finding out what other communities, parts of Eugene, are doing and what tools they're creating for themselves to make that even better. So that's an area of interest I want to pursue.
Awesome. Dwight.
I'd be interested in helping out in the communication piece.
Okay.
Dwight, do you have my contact information?
I think I do, Jerry.
Send me an email and I'll kind of discuss with you what we've done so far.
Okay, I will do that.
Awesome. Andrew.
I'm interested in the personal and family preparedness.
I'm interested in the resilient lifestyle.
Okay. Awesome. Jerry.
So there's a couple areas in here, the community outreach and engagement, logistics point of command, and media communications. A lot of this is covered under the ICS training. So I urge everybody to at least go to the Lasaro website, Lane County Sheriff's Amateur Radio Organization. And down there, they list links and at least take the 101 because it talks about what emergency command centers should be like and hierarchy and the protocols and the things that should be done. And I think we should all work through and with that sort of concept.
Awesome. That's a good point, Jerry. Charlesy.
Just that I would hope Jerry would get that to you, that you might relay it to us. I'm not familiar with those terms, the acronym and the Lasaro website. So if
I'll get it to her and she can.
Jackie, okay, great.
Yep, I will definitely get that sent out. That's a great point, Jerry. If there's material and foundations out there, we definitely want to be utilizing what's out there and not reinventing the wheel. So that's a good point. All right. Jan.
Lots of interesting stuff here. I'd like to know more about everything really, but I'll just limit my choices here. Food and water preparation and storage is kind of phrased a little bit odd, but I think I know what that's saying. And medical care and first aid and resilient lifestyles.
Okay.
Jerry, I just looked in my contact list and I do not have your contact information.
It's real easy. My name is spelled with a G. So it's jerry@gbrown.com.
Got it. Thank you.
Already.
Awesome. Okay. And that's not to say you can't sign up. This isn't really a sign up. You can definitely participate in these things going forward. You don't have to express that interest tonight. If something comes up that you want to get more involved in later on, that's obviously totally cool. Or if you think of something else that's not on this list that you want to share with the group, that's always welcome as well. But this will at least give us a starting point for getting some trainings on the calendar coming up in the next couple of months and getting this information out to our neighbors. So thank you to anybody who threw out their name in the hat. And I'm going to write all those down. I'll get more information out to you all on what we can do for next steps with those. All right, I'm going to stop sharing so I can check the agenda here and see what is next. All right, so we went through our work groups. So now we're going to work on, we're going to discuss any updates that we have heard about our CERT offerings. And I'll go ahead and share screen again. Okay, so in regards to CERT, the Community Emergency Response Team, this was one of the most interested topics from our neighbors. And I have gone through the training. I think a handful of other people on this group are also CERT certified. It is wonderful information and wonderful knowledge to learn. I know everybody else will agree to that. So we have been asking for updates from the city of Eugene of when they're going to offer that next session. And Ed, correct me, I'm wrong, but I believe they're considering an in-person training in the fall of 2021 at this point, but that is not yet official.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I did a little digging. I know everybody's anxious to get a hold of some of that information. So I did a little digging this week and found there are a couple of online options for obtaining that CERT knowledge. And from what I was able to click through just quickly, they seemed very informative. Two of them were offered through the FEMA website, and one of them was offered through the University of Utah. I think Ed has taken the FEMA courses. I clicked through the University of Utah courses a little bit more. And the online, we do want to point out that the online trainings do not offer an official CERT certification. In-person training is required to have that official certification. So those certifications would become relevant in the event that CERTs are deployed by the city of Eugene. And even if you are CERT certified, you're not allowed to identify as a CERT unless you are deployed by the city on official business. So we want to put that disclaimer out there. So the online trainings, CERT is definitely something I really enjoyed the training to go through. So I'm going to put my name in the hat for that kind of work group to further that training with everybody else. I want to go through those online trainings and see how we can work that into this group. And those online training links I will send out in the meeting notes as well for anybody else who wants to click into those and get going on those right away. Any other questions about CERT? Comments? Yeah.
Jackie, yeah, one, I've taken several of the FEMA courses, and let me just, for your, personal benefit, once you take the course and you pass it, then you can print a certificate, a FEMA certificate. You can save it and print it, and that shows that you passed the class. And then later on down the road, and so you can make a file of those, and later on down the road, somebody might ask you if you got this training or that training, and you say, oh yeah, I took that 6 years ago online, and they say, well, do you have your certificate? And if you have the certificate, then that's your lifetime credential that you passed the course, that you took and passed the course. So then if you can produce your certificate, then you might not have to take the course again, and you could be deployed. When you deploy, you would be able to fulfill that function, just as long as you have a certificate. So, and I've got certificates that I've taken since like the 70s, and they're still good. Once you take the class, then you're good for life.
That's good to know. Yeah, that's really good information. And that was from the FEMA website that it gives you the certificates?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, that online course I was talking about is the FEMA course, IC 101. That's the one that's the overview of everything. And I'll get that to you.
Awesome. Okay. All right, so lots more information to come on CERT. That's definitely a high level interest in the group. So there would be more coming out of that. Next up, we have our Map Your Neighborhood discussion. So I think it was in December 2020, we had an overview through the Northwest CERT meeting that Ed leads. And we had a neighbor share, she let us record the training. She went through how to implement the Map Your Neighborhood program. And for anybody who hasn't heard of what that program is, it's basically you contacting your neighbors, people on your street, people you live by, whatever area you want to dig out, and say, hey, in the event of an emergency, let's come up with a plan together. If you have maybe elderly people on your street that you need to check in, or somebody who might have a disability, who might need help getting around, maybe their power's out and you need to go check on them. The Map Your Neighborhood program is really for sharing resources and making sure that you are the first responders to your neighbors, because in the event of a large disaster, first responders may not be able to get to us. So it'd be nice to be able to check on each other. So I will share that recorded training in the meeting notes, and we will eventually have that posted probably on our website. We do also want to put out the reminder that we need to consider COVID guidelines during any in-person interactions. So this is strictly sharing training information at this point. And Fred, did you have something you want to add?
Yes, I was wondering, during the Mackenzie River fires, were any neighborhoods up there? Had any neighborhood mapping been done? Any CERT trainers in the area? Did it help them?
That's a good question. Ed, yeah, go ahead.
To my knowledge, no Lane County or Eugene or Springfield certs were deployed during all those fires. But I saw, like, I think in a newspaper on OPB News or something, I saw a photograph and downloaded it, which was somebody from Marion County in a CERT t-shirt, on the fire scene. And so I think other towns and counties did deploy some of their certs for those fires, but just Lane County and Eugene and Springfield did not.
Jerry.
Yeah, Jackie, I just, on the chat, I just shared the URL for the FEMA incident control.
Got it. Thank you. All right. So as far as Map Your Neighborhood goes, so that training happened, the recording happened in December of 2020. I was wondering if anybody out here has, I think the Norman Street team that's here that's how that started, but does anybody want to share updates? Have you done any of this in your neighborhood? How is it going for you?
Are you asking for any of us to?
Yeah, whoever wants to speak
yeah.
up.
I only just recently sent out the links to the training we went through. Some of us went through in December, and there were a lot of links to other resources in that. And so I would guess now that the rains may be slowing down a bit, we have some history in our little neighborhood of getting together in a nearby cul-de-sac and keeping social distancing and talking. And I could see us getting started in that kind of more informal way, and maybe starting literally to put together a little map of our area with names and contact information, which would be a huge accomplishment, and keep the dialogue going, recruit more people. And I think that I think five of us have expressed interest right away in getting involved. So I think it will be easy to add to that core group. I'm encouraged.
Awesome. Risha?
And thanks, Charles E., for all those links that you sent. I looked at those today and really was excited for that. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Yeah. And Fred, immediately when I started talking to him, Fred is so talented. There's a lot of skills and a lot of equipment that could come in handy in an emergency. And he immediately said, I'll walk from door to door with you, and I thought that was so, it just made me feel like it wasn't a burden, but it was going to actually start happening. So that felt good.
That's great.
Mhm.
Jan?
Yeah, this isn't Eugene, but I think it's a little quick story that I think people will appreciate, because it is about Map Your Neighborhood, and it doesn't involve me personally, but I know that in Port Townsend, Washington, there's a unusual level of interest in kind of resilience and permaculture in that town. But the town doesn't have a neighborhood association or a neighborhood program. Port Townsend doesn't have a neighborhood program. So what people did is they substituted Map Your Neighborhood and created their own neighborhood associations, smaller than what we have here in Eugene. but, you know, the sort of map your neighborhood scale, you know, of maybe 14, 16, 18 households. So that's how they kind of, instead of having neighborhood associations, they've created those same kind of relationships using Map Your Neighborhood. So that's just they use it in a really creative way, even beyond what its original intention was.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it seems like even just from Charlie, from your example, it's a great way to get to know your neighborhood or your neighbors. You wouldn't, you may not have another reason to approach them and say anything to them, but in the event of, you know, hey, let's prepare for emergencies together. That's always a good icebreaker. All right. Anybody else want to share Map Your Neighborhood? There will definitely be more information coming out about this. We will get the training out to everybody. Any questions for now? All right. All right, so we'll move on to our first aid and CPR train discussion. Do we have Ron? Yeah, we have Ron on today. So we wanted to get a feel. There was a lot of interest in first aid and CPR training from the new member survey. And if everybody could give maybe just a thumbs up on your interest level in receiving an official certification in first aid and CPR. I guess let me phrase this question differently. We're curious about your interest level in receiving just general knowledge versus an actual certification. So if we were able to organize a training for you to get all of the knowledge from first aid and CPR training, but you don't actually have that hands-on experience, so you're not able to get the certification, is everybody still interested in just general knowledge?
I am.
Okay. Okay, so that's most of the group. That's good. And then does anybody have an interest level in an in-person format over virtual? Jerry, okay.
I mean, if that was possible, sure, but
Possible, okay,
yeah, if it was possible.
cool.
I think we could do it with 6-foot spacing
Okay,
and clean. I don't know if they have a name for those dolls, but you know, we could wipe it clean with alcohol and things like that.
yeah. So Ron, do you want to share a little bit about some of the things you've been thinking about, some of the ideas you've been working on in this space?
Sure. So partly it was mostly the CPR and the first aid. So I'm a American Red Cross instructor, and that's a big interest of mine, is to be able to make sure the community can do CPR, and whether it's being officially certified or having some general knowledge of it, I think is definitely beneficial for everyone. I also am a Boy Scout leader as well, and so I'm always telling the Scouts, I do CPR with them as well, and they all kind of look at me and they're like, why do we have to do this? And I always tell them that, you're going to be out in the middle of nowhere and in the woods with a bunch of adults, and the adults are the ones that are going to probably have the problems. And so it's going to be the youth that are going to need to save us. And so, my philosophy is training the youth and getting them, our next generation to be trained to be able to help with, first aid and CPR in the event that there's an emergency and it needs to be done. I think that I'd like to try to get something started with getting the community trained, or more people in the community trained, either through CPR, either with a certification, or with just maybe some general knowledge classes if people are interested in that and not really wanting to get the certification. The certification usually normally comes with a cost, so some people may not be interested in that. The certification usually typically lasts for 2 years when you get certified. And I'm also a Grange member, so I'm talking with the Grange to see if it's a possibility to be able to use that facility to be able to do the trainings at. In-person trainings, we can do in-person trainings right now. There are limitations to the size, and also with COVID, there's safety precautions and health precautions that have to be taken. So, there's possibilities. There are virtual offerings, courses online as well that people are able to take. I believe that there's lots of other companies out there that offer it. Gary?
Do those online, I saw some online, and mine recently went out of date. It's been 2 years. So I've been looking to get recertified. Are those online courses, do you get a real certification, or is it required to do hands-on if you can't do it virtually? I don't know, I'm asking you.
There are ones out there that you can get a certification. The American Red Cross has an online CPR one that you can get a certification from. It is, there's benefits to doing it online right now, especially versus in person. But there are also benefits to being in person as well, and being in a group of people that you can talk to. And a lot of times the stories that come out of the classes and the courses are more of an impact for people than the actual course and just taking the course. So, the online one, you don't get that same feedback a lot of times, and you don't get the person or the mannequin that you're using. You're not getting that real life experience. So it can be kind of a drawback. When you're in person, or for us as instructors, we have to make sure that the person can actually compress the chest well enough and do the compressions and go through that whole process. And online, they can't really do that. So there's definitely some pluses and minuses for both. And right now online, you can do it in the comfort of your own home. And some people, you can kind of do it. Hey, if it's 1 in the morning and you decide I want to take a CPR class, you can do it online. So, probably won't be able to do that in person at 1 in the morning, but definitely, there's different.
And what's the thinking on the latest song you're supposed to sing while you're doing the compression?
So, yeah, that depends on the group that you're with, but a younger group, Justin Bieber seems to be the one that everyone recognizes versus the other few songs that are apparently out of date for those that are under 20. So start singing it and they're like, what is
I'm
that?
afraid I don't know Justin Bieber. I hate to admit it.
Oh,
Charles?
I just wanted to add something because Misty Frost, who isn't here tonight, but is sort of the chair along with Jackie, she has mentioned several times that one of her priorities is to ultimately go to the schools, work with them, and get young people involved in this. I think she's especially thinking of high school age people who are probably going to need these skills a lot in their lives. And we certainly need younger people to be ready to help us in the future. So I think that's pretty exciting to see this actually extend beyond adults. That's all.
Ron, I have a question for you. You mentioned that you do Boy Scout leadership. Are there Eagle Scouts or in the neighborhood that we might get involved in this group, or even older Boy Scouts?
We probably could. The troop that I'm with, I'm trying to get them involved. There are awards that they can earn for emergency preparedness, plus there's a merit badge for emergency preparedness as well. Making kits or go bags and being prepared. So, kind of, that was another thing that I think that I talked to Jackie is about trying to get the Boy Scout, the troop involved. We meet at the Urban Grange. And so, being able to conduct courses or use the Grange as, that community ground, ground zero for being able to do some trainings if we can, because that's essentially, the Grange, that's part of why they're there is for the community as well. So trying to,
Where's this green? I know there's one here on Irvington. Where's the one you're speaking about?
that's Irving Grange on the one on Irving.
Irvington, great,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. So there's another one, the Santa Clara Grange, and that's over off of just before Hunsaker, I think, off of there. So, but yeah, hopefully, trying to get some involvement with the troops, the Boy Scout troops in the area, I think would be beneficial as well. Like Charles said, having
First of all, they're younger and they have muscles.
Yeah.
I'm not picking up a 200-pound generator right at the moment. That's for sure.
Yeah, we did, I think, a CERT training not too long ago. It was not this past May, but the May before that, was for the Scouts. So a lot of them got certified. So that was great.
I got a question. Ron, you probably know this. Is there a scout troop here in River Road, like at the Methodist Church, or a resident scout troop here in River Road?
There was just recently that one, I believe, is no longer around. So there is another one that meets off of Maxwell that I think is still around, and there are a couple in South Eugene as well. I'd have to get the list to see the actual areas that they're in, but I believe that there's used to be 2 on River Road, one on the north side and then one on the south side, but the one on the north side is no longer in operation. So I'd have to check on that.
I would encourage you, if you've got access to that info, to find out if there is, because like everybody here, love to see younger people involved with this. And of course, there is South Eugene High School, and I think it would be great to reach out, any way we can, and even younger grades too.
Yeah, I can tell you they mostly do not do Zoom. They're not a huge fan of Zoom. They like their video games as well, so it's a real challenge at times to get their attention for these types of formats. When we began with COVID, trying to meet with the troop, we couldn't meet in person, and trying to get them online to meet was not easy, but we got through it, and then we've been able to meet in person outdoors since the restrictions were lifted. So getting them in person is always easier, and getting them engaged. But we've got a pretty good group, and I think definitely getting more scouts involved. And then the council office is located off of MLK, so across from Autzen Stadium, and I can talk to them as well to see what we can do to try to get some more groups, youth groups involved. See if we can draw some youth in and get them involved.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. So a lot of good things in progress for first aid. Ron, I think maybe we can circle back. I need to get a hold of Misty to get her input on some of those items and see what kind of support we would have from the board as well, to see how they could support us in that area. But I definitely think we'll be able to move quickly / far on this topic. So we'll add that as one of our follow-ups. The other, let's see, any other items on first aid CPR training? Okay. So that was the last item on our agenda for tonight. We did have one announcement that I skipped at the very beginning of the call, that the City of Eugene is offering free personal protective equipment to local businesses and nonprofits with 100 or fewer employees. And I believe they've engaged the CERT to assist with handing out some of that PPE gear. But there is a link that will be in the meeting notes. If you or any businesses that you know of might need that assistance from the city of Eugene, I think they can apply to get some of that equipment. Jerry.
I have a report on the ham radio stuff that Matt and I are working on, if you want to know it, or you want to wait for next month, or.
Oh, I think that would be great if you have an update on what's going on.
So thanks to Matt, we got contact with, I'm trying to remember, Andy Davis. And he has put together a ham radio communications guide for the Northeast community, CERT group. And they're trying to get it authorized. And so I've modified my plans to meet that. And Matt and I are working on doing a post-COVID, because we obviously, if we're going to meet and then give a class and things like that, it has to be after when we can meet. We might be able to do it. And I suggested actually that we use the parking lot of the Grange over here on Irvington as a gathering point and meeting point. So we are working on that.
That's great. So are you using their plan and kind of modifying it for our area?
Exactly. So there are certain protocols that he had put into place, and that goes along with the FEMA guidelines. That's why I brought those up. And so we're looking at basically a 3-part thing where part 1, where we all meet and we all turn on our radios and talk and set them up and things like that. I encourage everybody to get an FRS radio minimum, and I'm kind of changing my tune and maybe thinking about getting a combined GMR FRS radio. I'll look into anything. I'll spend some time finding those. So that'll be turning them on, practicing talking to each other. The second part will be where we fan out and we check distances, because it'll be good for you to understand the distances that you can communicate with these radios. And the third part would be a simulated emergency situation.
Wow.
So that's kind of what we're looking at.
Jerry,
Yeah.
if someone in our group wanted to be a ham radio operator, how much investment is involved in radios and headsets and antennas?
Okay. Well, thanks to the Chinese, you can get in fairly cheap. So, but I don't recommend the Chinese. There's these, they're called Bofeng, and you better be able to speak Chinese to figure out how to program them. The only way you can do it is to hook it up to your computer and buy software to program them. Because if you try and physically do it with the keys, you'll never figure it out. To answer your question, less than $200. So you can buy a really nice, decent radio for about $150 with a decent antenna. And then it'll cost you $50 to get your, take the exam. And trust me, it's really simple to pass this exam. Would you put this shoe on your left foot or your right foot? That's kind of the question. They're trying to get people. And I suggest you do it as quick as possible, because there's a bill before Congress to raise the rate. Right now it's free to apply to the FCC. The local clubs charge, 15 or 30 bucks, somewhere in there, to take the exam, because they have to have exam. The government seceded they used to have to go to an FCC office to take the exams. Now there's a group, ham radio operators, take classes and pass an exam. So each club has the ability to issue exams. The one we're using out of the Valley Radio Club is actually coming out of Portland. And in order to take the exam now remotely, you have to be able to have 2 cameras. So you literally have a camera above you looking down on you and one looking at you from the front. So they make sure you don't cheat. Is basically it. But when I took mine, which was last summer before we really locked down, I went out to the coast and I sat in the parking lot and they came to my car and handed me the exam. And I took the exam and then I honked the horn and gave them the sheet. And they came back a little while later and said, okay, you passed. I went from a technician to a general. So that's now starting to get a little more technical. But the technician license is really more safety and memorizing what bands you can use and what frequencies.
Charlie?
So Jerry, if I wanted advice about what radio to buy, I could email you or talk to you by phone outside this meeting and get some good advice.
Well, I'll tell you what we used to, the 3 rules of sailing, and it also applies to ham radio. Rule number 1 of sailing is that you can't sail directly into the wind. Rule number 2 of sailing is you can't breathe water. Rule number 3 of sailing is everything else is just someone's opinion. See rule 3. So,
Okay. Well, your opinion's still better than mine.
yeah, and Matt may have different opinions on what.
I do.
But here, let me go. Get,
So I need to also run this past Matt as well. Okay.
I
so
would
this,
recommend.
this right here is my little handheld that doesn't look like it's showing. I have to do it that way. This is my little handheld with a longer antenna than normal. And this is my handheld, and that cost me about $150.
That's nice. And I would be clearly going to also touch bases with Matt.
Sure.
Input.
That's good.
I can barely hear you, Matt, but
We might wait until we have our little training session,
Mhm.
because that way we can do it. Or we might want, if you want, Chelsea, we could do this all as one meeting or something like
Yeah.
that, if other people are interested.
Yeah, I'm sure we could add that as an agenda item to get everybody in on that all at once, so you don't have to do it a bunch of times. Awesome. All right. So we finished our agenda way ahead of schedule. Are there any other items, topics that anybody wants to add for this evening? We'd also like, a question for this group while everybody's here. How often would everybody like to have meetings like this? Is a monthly basis? Do we think that's a good cadence? Do we want them more often than monthly? Less often?
At least once a month.
Yeah, I would say once a month would be good. And then, particular groups might meet more often as they like.
Yeah. Awesome.
It would be really wonderful to get together once a month and get updates on what people are learning and doing together. And it would be a motivation for me, for sure, on mapping the neighborhood to have something new to report. And this was an excellent meeting, in my opinion. Jackie, you did a fabulous job.
Thank
It's
you.
well organized. We were on time. People got to talk a lot. It was great.
Awesome. Thank you for everybody's participation. This has been great. I'm hoping that in the future meetings, it'll be less of me talking and more of everybody else giving updates on what's going on. Dan?
Yeah, I just want to quickly add that in the realm of kind of permaculture and into the realm also of preparedness, there are in our neighborhood a couple, 2 or 3 dozen homes that have substantially reworked the homes and properties in a pretty creative way to reduce eco footprints and produce more stuff on site, primarily food, but also rainwater catchment and also energy. And this has been going on in River Road, to my knowledge, for about 20 years. And we've had many, many, many site tours here in River Road to visit these places. And every summer we've had site tours, and I'm sure we'll do that again this summer. If we have to be social distancing, we'll be doing that. But obviously, with the people we have here, there's lots of resources, and that's great. People know all kinds of stuff they can share with each other. And the thing that I have that I can share with is doing these kinds of permaculture projects at home to make us less dependent on having to go to the store so much, and be more of a producer than a consumer. That's not being off the grid or anything like that, but there's we can go even beyond having a nice garden. There's other things we can do, and there's lots of examples of this in River Road. So I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that as time goes on. But we have lots of permaculture relevant to what everybody's interested in here. A lot of resources right here in River Road.
Yeah, Charles. Oh, celebrating, yes. No, that's awesome, Jan. I'm excited about that. I'm excited to tie all of this together. You're absolutely right. That ties into all of the different areas of interest. So this is great.
Yeah, well, it's awesome that people have so many different skills here. You know, this is great.
Yes. As far as action items coming out of this meeting, so I'll be writing up all of the meeting notes that we talked about today. There's a lot of links that are going to be coming out to you all. I think I'll probably shoot for the first week of March, probably the first week of each month for our meeting schedule, unless anybody has any concerns about that kind of timeline. But I'll send out a poll to everybody again to get some input on days and times, and we'll get that on the calendar. I want everybody to be able to plan ahead of time for this type of thing, and get as many people here as we can. So this is very exciting. Jan, yes?
Yeah, one final item. I put an item in chat about these conversations I'm involved with different people involved with these conversations from all over the country. We've done 2 out of 8 so far. If you're familiar with Zoom, you know you can save the chat so you can have all the information that's on chat. So these next conversations we're having the 18th and the 25th. So there's more information on my website. I'm kind of the ringleader of this particular educational initiative, and my website's on that chat, and you can go to my website and you can find out more information. These are Zoom conversations, and they're free, and you can log on and you can hear just some awesome people all over the country doing all kinds of great projects that fit into the larger realm of a more healthy and resilient and ecologically conscientious kind of a culture and economy.
Is the correct way to save? The way I do it is I go down to the bottom of the chat to the right, and next to where it says file, there are 3 little dots. And then I click on that and it says save chat. And then I find the file on my computer.
On your desktop.
Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be a little thing that will show up on your desktop. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, it might go to your downloads folder, depending on what computer you have.
Yeah, you may have to search for it actually, but it'll be there somewhere.
In mine, it went under documents, and then it created a Zoom folder.
Right.
Oh, cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, well, we'll give everybody a little bit of time back tonight, but if you have ideas for future meetings, questions, comments, definitely send them my way. Thanks everybody for joining tonight.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Good night.
Good
Bye.
night.